Hi guys, welcome back to the Art of Server. So in today's video, I'm going to do an unboxing of this thing right here. This is the Anidees AI RAIDER XL full tower PC case. So there's been a recent design trend in the PC case world, and that is the designers are getting rid of these 5.25" drive bays that are traditionally used for optical drives. And I really feel like that's kind of a shame. I can understand the reasoning behind it because people don't really use optical drives anymore. But one of the things that I really loved about the 5.25" drive bays was that it kind of served as a universal modular design pattern for PC cases. And what I mean by that is that not everybody, even before people got rid of optical drives, they didn't always use those 5.25" drive bays for optical drives. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen those 5.25" drive bay modules that allow you to install a media card reader, fan control module, a sensor readout, display. There were all sorts of things you could do with those 5.25" drive bays. And if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know that I often review or mention Icy Dock. And Icy Dock is a brand, they're a wonderful company that makes these really high quality drive enclosure or drive cages that fit in those 5.25" drive bays to allow you to adapt to 3.5" drives, or even a bunch of 2.5" SSDs. And even more recently, I think they have solutions for M.2 drives as well. It's really kind of a shame that they're getting rid of those 5.25" drive bays in a lot of modern PC cases. And so, as you guys know, that I talk to a lot of people who contact me on eBay or elsewhere asking me about their server builds at home. And one of the things that I have a long discussion with a lot of people about is finding a case that can hold a lot of drives, because a lot of our home servers are basically storage servers, right, for our home media. A lot of people using Plex and that kind of stuff. And it's really kind of getting hard to find cases that even have a lot of 3.5" drive bays. And there's even a trend where I think we're seeing less and less of 2.5" drive bays, because a lot of case designers are assuming that you just have your M.2 SSD on the motherboard. In spite of that trend where a lot of these cases are getting rid of 3.5" drive bays, or in this case 5.25" drive bays, Anidees is doing something that is totally against that trend. I thought it was really interesting that Anidees was doing this, because nobody else is doing a case that has a lot of 5.25" drive bays, and at least not something recent. All right, so for the interest of full disclosure, I reached out to Anidees telling them that I really think this case is really interesting for my audience, where we're talking about storage server builds. And they decided to send me this case for review. I believe I get to keep it after this review because they're not asking for it back. But no money has exchanged hands. They did not stipulate what I can or cannot say about their product or brand. And so the opinions I'm sharing with you today are purely my own. And I'm just basically wanting to share this with you guys because I think it makes for a very interesting storage server build case. So anyway, let's go ahead and unbox this and see what we're talking about here. Oh, that side already came loose. All right, so let's take a look here. Nice packaging. All right, and this side seems to have extra foam, and I believe that's probably because one of the window side of this case does have tempered glass, so maybe this is there just to protect that. Let's see. Yep. All right, so let's pull this case out. All right, so which side is the top? Okay, I can feel some feet down in here, so that's probably the bottom. Let's flip it over this way. All right. So this is probably the side you guys might want to see. All right, take the top foam off. Yeah, so this side has that tempered glass window, and looks like some sort of filter came loose a little bit, but that's okay. Here. All right. Yep, this looks like a magnetic filter, which is kind of nice. So let's go ahead and let's put this on the Workbench so we can get a better view of this. And I'll switch the cameras and stuff like that so we can get a good look at this thing and kind of talk about some of the features. I'm not going to do a full review of this case in this particular video. I may do a kind of a build project out of this, just so you guys can see what it's like to build in this case. I'll leave a link down in the video description if you want to see the full specs of this. Look into this a little bit more. But all right, let me just move this thing to the Workbench so we can kind of get a better look at this. All right, guys, here's the case on my Workbench. And as you can see, there are all these 5 1/4" drive bays up here, and there's a total of 12 of them. So the interesting thing is that Anidees on their spec sheet says that they can hold something like 12 3.5" hard drives or something like that. But actually, if you recall the Icy Dock adapter that can adapt 3 of these drive bays into 5 3.5" hard drive bays, that means I can put 5, 5, 5, and 5 for a total of 20 drives up front that are going to be hot swappable if you have those Icy Dock drive cages. So nobody does this anymore. This is pretty unique case these days. Even though, if you go back 10 years, there's like an Antec 900, I think, or Antec. There was an Antec case that was very similar to this many, many years ago. And you can maybe find them on eBay used or something like that, but they're getting a little bit hard to come by. So I think this is kind of interesting that Anidees is doing this. I don't know about you guys. I've never heard of this brand, Anidees. If you guys have heard of this brand before, or maybe you have some of their products, like leave a comment down below and let me know what you think about this company, because I honestly have never heard of these cases or this particular brand before. All right, let's take a look up here. There is a power switch and reset switch, looks like, mic, headphone input, USB 3 ports. So that's what's at the top. There's this huge ventilation hole opening, and it's covered by a magnetic kind of mesh filter. They really designed this case not just as a storage server build, but if you want to build like a regular PC, and a lot of these I guess ventilation areas are designed to hold lots of fans or radiators, and so if you want to do a lot of liquid cooling, stuff like that, it's certainly possible. Now the interesting thing is, earlier we saw that there's also a mesh here, and I guess you could also install radiator and fans in this area if you want to intake some cool air on the side there. And they have this window. This is a tempered glass window, so you can see the internals of the case. And there is the Anidees brand around the PSU shroud, I guess, or the PSU chamber that would go in there. So what's interesting is that they have this glass just screwed onto the frame. So it's not like some PC cases where like the glass window kind of opens. I don't think it actually opens on its own. I think this whole frame, this whole panel needs to come off, and that glass is just kind of bolted on to that frame. So yeah, over here there are some thumb screws. So let's go ahead and open this guy up. Let me move it. Okay, so yeah, there's 3 thumb screws. Oh no, actually 2. Yep, so there's a handle here. I guess it's for pulling. So let's see, let's take this out. Open this up a little bit. And yep, one more down here. Okay, and I'm guessing that I can just pull on this. Okay, and try not to drop this panel since it has a glass on it. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, let's put this down. So yeah, the whole panel just comes off like an old traditional PC case, and that glass is just bolted on there. So, all right, so here's the internal of the case. And so there's this panel here that has the kind of a honeycomb pattern. And so this is, I believe, to allow you to install a radiator and fans here if you wanted to, but it also serves as kind of the frame to mount any 5 1/4 inch drive devices back here. Now, Anidees did mention that, you know, I think they sell brackets that can install in these 5 1/4 inch drive bays to hold like SSDs or convert it to a 3 1/2 inch drive bay, but they're not as compact and dense as those Icy Dock drive enclosures that I've talked about in the past. So, you know, although they're probably a lot cheaper, but if you really wanted a high density and you wanted a lot of 3 1/2 inch drive bays, I think adapting this to install those Icy Dock cages would get you the most drives in this case. Now, one thing I wanted to kind of check out was that if you guys remember when I did kind of the unboxing and a quick review of the Icy Dock 3 5 1/4 inch drive bay to 5 3 1/2 inch drive cage, we discovered that there's no slot on the sides to accommodate for the tabs that you typically might see in a 5 1/4 inch drive bay. And I'm looking at this, trying to feel, there's nothing major in the middle here, like I saw in that Z820, but there are tiny little tabs right here. So I don't know if that's going to get in the way or not. Maybe in another video, if we do a build in this case, I'll try that out and see. But you know, these are pretty tiny, and at least from some of the product videos I've seen, yeah. So this frame can be removed. So I think there's a couple of screws here that look like it holds it in. Maybe here too. So I think, and the reason I'm kind of pointing that out is that, you know, when I reviewed that Icy Dock drive enclosure, and I was intending to install in the Z820, I didn't continue on installing it because modifying that case to take out the tabs and stuff like that would require, since there was like a motherboard and everything in there, I didn't want any metallic debris kind of going around there, especially with the electronics that were there. So if I were to do that properly, I'd probably have to remove the case and disassemble everything and then modify the case. But in this case, I think you can actually take this frame out and then modify it elsewhere, clean it up before and reinstall it. And so that makes it a little bit easier without having to I mean, of course, there's nothing in here right now, but if there were something and you got to a point where you already had a system set up and you wanted to modify this, you could do that. And also, this panel being modular and removable, you know, you could probably set this up so you can just kind of pound these tabs flat as one way to remove them, or you can cut them off with a Dremel tool or something like that. So the fact that this frame can, this piece can come out, allows you kind of basically to modify it outside the case, which makes it a lot easier than trying to handle the whole case. Anyway, is something similar on the back here. So there are no tabs on this side here, but oh, okay, there are some over on this side. So they have tabs on this side and then on the front, towards the front here. Yeah, so I guess there are these panels that probably allow you to install fans up here if you wanted to do that. let's actually try taking out. All right, guys, so I had to put the camera down to figure out how to take this case apart, but I finally figured it out. Just wanted to show you guys. So these meshed covers for the 5 1/4" drive bays, they're attached to this frame, and they're actually screwed in, so they don't just pop out easily. That's kind of an interesting design choice. I kind of would prefer if they had designed this so that things are easily removable. But in any case, so the way you take this apart is that there's a whole opening up on the bottom here, and you just pull on this, and that front panel just comes off. So if you look at the inside, each of these meshed covers is screwed in. So you got to remove 2 screws, it looks like, to get each one of them out. So that's a lot of screws. There's 12 of them, so that's 24 screws you got to remove if you want to completely open this up. Now, one thing I did notice while I was messing around with this is that there's this sheet of mesh here, I suppose to act as a filter. Although, I mean, so that's a finer mesh than this piece itself. So I guess it's for dust control if you have a lot of intake. So I guess if you wanted just this, so this is kind of a lesser fine mesh. And inside is this kind of finer mesh filter that you could use. So if you didn't want that, you could, I guess, take this out. Let's see. Yeah, you could just take this out. It's just a little sheet like that. So if you didn't want that, you could probably improve the airflow. And that is if you're actually using this, with fans mounted in front instead of hard drives, like I would do. But yeah, if you wanted more airflow, I guess you could remove that mesh pretty easily. That part at least is fairly straightforward. Removing this whole thing does require screws. It's a shame they didn't make this kind of like a snap-in type of design where you could just kind of remove that easier. Now there is mesh like everywhere, like every opening. So as I took this apart just now, I noticed on the side here, there's, yeah, so this is like another mesh filter thing that I guess is there to control the dust intake from these little ventilation holes on the side here. So I guess in terms of if you're very concerned about dust control and you're in a very dusty environment, I guess that's kind of nice to have that, and they are removable. Like I said, this is very easy to remove. So if you don't want it and you prefer the higher airflow, that's very easily accomplished there. So, but yeah, so these do require removing all the screws, but anyway, let's put this aside for a second. And so here are here's what the front looks like without that, those covers on. And there are these square panels with the honeycomb pattern again, and those are also screwed in. So you got to remove those 4 screws to get this. Oh, it looks like I cut myself a little bit here. Anyway. You'd have to remove 4 screws to get this panel off in order to open that up. So yeah, so that's a total of what you got to remove. So this I think covers 3. So that's 6 screws to remove the front mesh, and then 4 more screws. So 10 screws to open up each one. Yeah, a lot of screwing around. But yeah, they probably could put a little bit more thought into a toolless modular design. All right, so let me go get a screwdriver and actually remove one of these just to kind of check it out. All right, so I just removed the 4 screws to take that panel out, and here it is. So by the way, when you take the screws out, there's nothing else holding on. There's not like a hook or a latch or anything like this. It just kind of falls off. So be careful with that if you don't want to drop stuff. But anyway, yeah, so this opens up 3 of the 5 1/4" drive bays. So this definitely is going to require some modification for those Icy Dock drive cages to fit in here. I think this piece is all part of the motherboard tray. So yeah, so if you're going to modify this to adapt those Icy Dock drive cages, you probably want to do that before installing anything in here. And yeah, you can just, I don't know if this doesn't seem like really soft metal, so might require a little bit of pounding to bend this down, or use a Dremel or something and cut it right off. So, all right. So anyway, yep, that's what it looks like without the fan mounting plate, I guess is what this is. So it looks like you can mount, 120, 140 millimeter fans up front if you want to do that. All right, so let's take a look around here. Okay, so here is the motherboard tray. Looks like they already have standoffs for your standard ATX mounting. Now this case is, at least in the specification, pretty much will mount anything. They kind of listed every spec that I've ever heard of and ones I've never heard of either in terms of motherboard form factors. The one thing though, there are a lot of cases that say, for example, they'll accept an eATX, and I know eATX is not a real standard, but you know what I mean, the 12-inch by 13-inch format. That's very common for larger motherboards, but a lot of cases that say it's eATX compatible don't actually have the mounting holes, and so I'm not really sure if that is one of them, because I think eATX is just a tiny bit larger, so I would think maybe a mounting hole. So I don't know if, I mean, there are a whole bunch of mounting holes on the motherboard tray, so it might be possible they actually have the mounting holes for eATX, but I don't know until we actually try it. But there are a lot of standoff mounting holes here all the way out to here. So yeah, there's some crazy format that goes all the way down here. And yeah, let's see, hold on one second. Yep, so there's the, because I work a lot with super micro stuff, there's a format that they call eATX, which extends beyond this area right here. So, typical ATX motherboard would like extend right there. eATX kind of goes out like another inch that way. Now, I don't see any mounting holes in that area, so not sure. Now there are mounting holes right here, but that doesn't look like a motherboard standoff would need to be there for any reason. There are holes here, I think, probably for cable routing, and that's fine. Now there is this kind of this part is plastic. There's a plastic shroud here that I think is for cable management reasons. I'm not sure what these little slots are for, but I think there are cable routing holes underneath this. Let's take this off. I think there's thumb screws are a little bit tight. So, okay. Sorry, trying to do this with one hand. Okay. All right, so 2 screws out. This, okay, it's two pieces. Oh, that's interesting. So, oops. Yeah, I didn't realize, I thought this was all one piece, but I guess, oh, okay, so I see what they're trying to do here. So if you have a motherboard that extends out this far, you could still install one of these, I guess, to kind of hide your cables that are going through these grommets here. So, so that's kind of interesting. I still don't really understand what these slots are for. Is that maybe for like a really long PCI card to kind of slide in there? But I don't know if that would work too well. And I guess there's also an opening here. Although if you mounted a bunch of fans or a radiator back here, I don't think you'd be able to use this opening here. But anyway, so yeah, there are just a lot of mounting holes here. Yeah, go check out the specs, because they mention all sorts of different motherboard form factors, ones I've never heard of, that will fit this case. Down here are also some cable routing, I assume. So I don't know if you can tell from here, but so an ATX motherboard would end right around here, and so these openings would be to route other cables that might connect to any connectors that are kind of on this lower side of the motherboard, things like your audio header, maybe USB ports, that sort of stuff. And so there are holes here, but there are also like a little cutout, but this panel looks like you have to knock it out. So if you needed more space, so like let's say you had a wider motherboard and you moved this down to here and here, so you moved this mounting point down, so there's I guess here and here. So for whatever form factor of a motherboard that is, you wouldn't be able to use these holes, so I guess you could punch out these openings here and use those to route your cables. And there's also some down here. Let me come up, stand up here. So there's also some openings down here that you can knock out these plates to make an opening to route some cables. There's also this part, so all of this is metal here. This part here looks like a plastic panel. It's also ventilated and looks like it has mounting holes for a variety of kind of fan mounting, maybe even radiator mounting, I don't know. And there are a total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 PCI slots here, and then 2 more vertical PCI slots. I don't know of a motherboard that would fit this case with 10 PCI slot openings. I do know of a Supermicro motherboard that does have that many PCI slots, but it's kind of a custom form factor, so I'm not sure it would even fit in here. But if you are building a JBOD enclosure and you're using this case to mount the 20 drives up here using the Icy Dock thing, a lot of these PCI slots could be useful for mounting like SAS cable connections. So you know those PCI plates that have like an SFF 8088 connector on the outside and an 8087 connector on the inside. Also, if you want to use a SAS expander, you could mount a SAS expander to these things and then power it, you know, with one of those PCI powered extenders as well. Now, if you did have a motherboard in here and you also wanted to add that SAS expander, let's say your motherboard comes to this point, you could use one of these PCI slots or even one of the vertical PCI slots to mount a SAS expander without using up a PCI slot, right? Because remember, a lot of the SAS expanders use the PCI slot just for power. And so if you install the SAS expander in a PCI slot, it's basically just using it for power and you're kind of throwing away the PCI lanes. So if you didn't want to do that, and you wanted to use those PCI lanes or save them for something else that's, you know, actually uses the PCI lanes, you could mount your SAS expander to one of these slots that's not that's not going to occupy the space of an actual PCI slot on the motherboard. So that is kind of an interesting possibility with having this many PCI slots. And even if you did have a motherboard that kind of extended all the way out and would use up all 10 slots, I don't know if anybody know of a motherboard that has this many PCI slots that could actually use this? I don't know. Leave a comment down below if you know of one. But even if you did, and you could then instead use one of these vertical PCI slots to mount a SAS expander as well. So there's just a lot of possibilities here in terms of if you were building a storage enclosure out of this, or even just a storage server. All right, so you got fan mount in the rear here, you know, your typical I/O panel. I wonder what that is up there. Take the mesh filter out. Okay. All right, so there's this honeycomb pattern up on top as well for ventilation. And I guess these must be mounting holes for either radiators or fans and stuff like that. All right, let's take a look at the back a little bit. Also, want to mention that there's some pretty substantial feet on this case. So I imagine there's probably ventilation on the bottom as well. Yeah, I can feel that. And so this does kind of give you at least almost like an inch of clearance from the floor to allow airflow from the bottom. So, so that's pretty nice. All right, let's look at the back here. Okay, all the PCI slots that we saw earlier, and here is the ATX power supply mounting bracket. So it looks like there are 4 screws that hold this bracket in, and then you can take this out and screw that onto your power supply. And some cables here. I imagine those are like the chassis cables. And the rear cover is just like the, or I guess that's the, not the rear, but the left side, the right side panel. So also removable with thumb screws. So 2 thumb screws, and it looks like a little place where you can pull on to open that up. All right, just to finish up this video, let me flip the case around and let's open that up and just take a quick look. All right, just flip the case around, and there's also another ventilation hole here with a magnetic mesh filter. So this looks like a little bit smaller, maybe for 120. Hold on a second. Okay, so here's a 140 millimeter fan. So it doesn't look like you can fit 140 millimeters on this side. So that's probably for 120. But it goes all the way from top to bottom. So that, if that was 120, you're probably looking at what, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 5 fans, maybe 4, something like that. Okay, so again, 2 thumb screws that hold this panel in. And just pull on this. There you go. All right, so there is the rear side of the motherboard tray. Oh, okay, so here's something that's interesting. This is kind of the official 3.5 inch drive bay. So there's all that 5 1/4 inch stuff up front, but see, this is what I mean by a lot of PC case designs no longer accommodate for a lot of hard drives. I mean, they're basically saying, yeah, you know, you probably only need 2 3.5 inch drive bays, and you know, for you guys who are watching my channel, you're building storage servers, that's just not going to be enough, but that's what they have. So I guess if you did use those Icy Docks up front, you can put 20 drives up front, you get another 2 drives right here. All right, and these have these little drive sleds and probably a box of accessories that they put in here. And back here there are some what looks like SSD mounting brackets. These are plastic. Yeah, these are plastic brackets that you can mount your SSD to, and then mount the bracket to the case with these 2 screws. That's what they have. They have these 3 brackets for 3 SSDs. And I suppose you could adapt this to, yeah, so they have holes here. You can probably mount 2.5 inch drives into these things as well. And, that's interesting. It looks like this can separate. Let me put the camera down. I want to check this out a little bit, and then I'll come back and show you guys what I figure out here. All right, guys, back. I figured out what this is all about. I noticed these, this little push tab here. It looks like this can separate. I was wondering what that was for, but basically, okay, so when you're mounting a drive, at least a 3.5 inch, or no, sorry, yeah, 3.5 inch drive, there are these pins here that basically insert into the typical screw holes. So this is screwless, I guess, is the point of this design. And in order to open this up, in order to get the drive in first, you have to open, so there's, yeah, let me turn it around. You push down on this and it opens up. So it kind of spreads open a little bit to allow you to put the drive in, and then you can snap it closed, and those pins will hold the drive into the tray. So anyway, that's the official 3.5 inch drive bays of this chassis, which there are only 2. I assume that you could also probably remove this if you have a larger power supply. But from a quick, from what I saw of the spec sheet, this space is intentionally open so you can route a lot of the cables and stuff like that underneath here to get up, you know, wherever it needs to go. And the clearance from here to the back panel is supposed to be, I think they said, like 2 centimeters. So that's quite a bit of clearance for routing a lot of cables back here. And there's also these hooks, I guess, where you can zip tie your cables for better cable management and whatnot. Those look like the cables to the USB ports. So that just goes down here. Yeah, so these are all the chassis cables and stuff like that. Looks like yep, USB 3 headers, the audio stuff. Anyway, that's what the back of the Anidees AI. I don't know what that means, why they have the word or the letters AI in the case name, but RAIDER XL case. So anyway, just wanted to share this with you guys in case you're looking for, pun not intended, but if you're looking for a PC case to build your new storage server, I think this is a pretty nice case that could allow you to install a lot of hard drives for a storage server build. All right, guys. So anyway, hope you found this interesting. And yeah, if this looks like an interesting case to you, go check out the link down in the video description to take a closer look at the detailed specs of this. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about this case. What do you think? Would you like to build a storage server using this case? And or do you know of any other cases that have this many 5 1/4 inch drive bays? I had a hard time finding them, and this is one of the few that I saw. That's a modern case, at least. There are some older cases, but they're no longer being manufactured, and you just have to try to find one on eBay or something like that. But all right, guys, so that's it for today's video. If you like this video, make sure to give it a like. And if you're new to this channel and you like this sort of stuff, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my new videos. Also, if you want to support this channel, go check out my eBay store. I have the greatest selection of IT mode HBA SAS controllers for your ZFS, Unraid, or TrueNAS builds. So go check out the link down in the video description to my eBay store. All right, guys, that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching and have a great day. Bye-bye.